Welcome back. So, now we will discuss further what we learned in the last class. We will try to explain a little more further and try to understand this mechanism of muscle contraction in detail. Now, let us try to see what we have learned in the last class, that we have this two actin filament. So, we have this actin, and then we have this myosin. Now, this actin and myosin filament, so now this is kind of continuous, and then we have this kind of globular head here, both the direction, and this is interacting. So, I am just drawing it not in a proper scale. So, we have to understand that this active site is kind of attaching towards the binding site of the myosin molecule, and see here the same thing. Now, after this binding of this actin, globular actin, to this myosin head, we have this dragging movement towards here. Now, this dragging movement is happening because of the involvement of calcium ion. So, the calcium 2 plus or calcium ion is important in order to do this contraction phenomena. So, if we look in total what is involved here, 2 molecule of actin. So, can we write here 2 molecule of actin plus 1 molecule of myosin and this calcium. This is the ultimate unit of muscle contraction. That means, the 2 actin filament along with 1 myosin filament is associating in the addition of calcium ion, which is coming from sarcoplasmic reticulum, and because of this all combination, actually what we are getting is muscle movement. Of course, we are not digging to the biology here, because we have here ATPase activity going on, which is causing hydrolysis of ATP, that is providing necessary energy to carry out this process. So, we are just finishing this topic here itself, saying that we have to understand this molecular mechanism in terms of, in nutshell, that we are having this molecule as a key player to do contraction phenomena. Now, we have now understood this whole process, and this is the actual basis of this contraction phenomena. Now, one thing is very logical in the human body. The human body is not constant. Every organism, every animal is behaving differently. Sometimes we do very fast action, sometimes the other time we do very slower action. So, in other words, some of the muscles are very fast in kind of movement, while the others are having very slow kind of movement. So, in body also we have the similar kind of muscles available. Some of them are very fast and some of them are very slow muscle. So, let us start with something which is called slow muscle. So, we will see slow muscle. So, in different parts of our body, we have some muscle which are called slow muscle. That means they are behaving very slow, they are contracting very slow. Sometimes these are also called as type 1 muscle. Sometimes they are also called as red muscle or red fiber. We will see why these are called red and why these are called slow. Now, the actual property of this muscle is such that these muscles are made up of very small fiber. So, they have very small fiber. So, the muscle fibers are smaller in nature, and because of this smaller nature, the innervation, the actual impulse, the actual activity of the neuron towards the muscle is slow. So, they have also very less innervation. So, we can say less impulse. So, the impulse, the transmission capacity of the neuronal kind of message to the muscle is slow in this kind of muscle. Now, the other very important thing about these muscles are they are rich in a very specific kind of pigmented protein, and that is called myoglobin. This myoglobin is oxygen containing pigment in muscle. So, oxygen carrying protein or pigment in muscle is called myoglobin. Myo stands for muscle, globin is a protein part. So, these are iron containing, oxygen carrying actually. So, these are the similar. So, what we have discussed in the respiratory system, that we have a very specific kind of molecules which is called hemoglobin, which is nothing but the iron containing pigment in the blood that carry oxygen. So, the oxygen carrying capacity is depending upon the hemoglobin in blood. Similarly, in case of muscle, the oxygen carrying capacity is governed by this myoglobin. Since these are red in color, so these are also red in color, that is why these fibers are also called as red fibers. So, since what we are saying here, there is huge oxygen content because myoglobin concentration is very high. So, very high myoglobin concentration is these muscles. So, because there is more oxygen here, there is more oxygenated kind of activities going on in these muscles. That means, these can be called as aerobic. So, these are all aerobic muscles. So, we can call it these are all aerobic muscle. Why? Because oxygen is more in this area. Why? Okay, because of more myoglobin content in those muscle cells. Now, if the mechanism is aerobic, then what is the big deal? All right, somebody says that you have a pigment which is more, that is carrying more oxygen, the phenomena is aerobic. What is the basis behind the novelty here? Now, the oxygen is a very important ingredient in manufacturing of ATP molecule using mitochondria. So, the mitochondria content, the energy concentration here is very high. So, mitochondria which is actual energy producer in the cell is very high in this kind of muscle. So, but in general these are very slow innervated, aerobic in nature, but they are causing very slow activity. Now, if we see and try to dig out the example, what are the slow muscles available in the body, then a very obvious example is a soleus muscle. The muscle name is soleus, and the soleus muscle is located in the back side of the lower limb. So, if we see, suppose this is the lower side of the limb. So to see this structure, one has to see the actual limb. So, if we are standing here, so this is the front part of the limb. Just in the back part of the limb, we have in the back side of this muscle which is called soleus, and this soleus muscle is one of the slow type of muscle that is having this kind of phenomena, this kind of activity, these kind of features in the muscle fiber. So, this is all about slow fiber. The slow fiber, type 1 fiber, or these are also called as red fibers. Now, we will see the other variety. So, we have another type. So, opposite to slow, we have fast. So, this is fast muscle. These are also called as type 2 muscle, or these are also called as white. Instead of red, they are called white muscle. So, opposite, we will just try to see the opposite feature. So, the fiber length is quite large. So, we have large fiber length. So, the fiber length is very large. So, we have large fiber length in this, this kind of muscle. Second very important thing, instead of mitochondria, they have more content of sarcoplasmic reticulum. So, sarcoplasmic reticulum, as we discussed in the last class, is the organelle that is giving or flushing out calcium ion. So, sarcoplasmic reticulum is very high, and this sarcoplasmic, high content of sarcoplasmic reticulum is giving more calcium into the space, into the sarcoplasm, and because of this high calcium content, there is fast contraction. So, contraction is very high in this kind of muscle. Third point, there the myoglobin concentration was very high, and because of that region more and more blood supply, and because of more and more redness in the fiber, here myoglobin concentration is less. Why? Because the sarcoplasmic reticulum concentration is very high here. So, because of less concentration of myoglobin, these fibers appear white. So, we have less concentration of myoglobin, and because of this region we are calling this muscle as white muscle fiber or white fibers. The other important thing which we have to correlate, similarly what we correlated with the mitochondria, that there you have more oxygen, more energy, more mitochondria. Here you have more calcium, more contraction, less myoglobin, that means less respiration. So, here in these fibers we have more of another phenomena, not aerobic, but we call it anaerobic phenomena. So, we are having an aerobic kind of respiration, anaerobic kind of phenomena more in this kind of fiber as compared to aerobic in the red fibers. Now, these are some of the features, some of the very characteristic features of this fast fiber, or what we call is a white fiber. Now, having said that, again we have lot of different examples in the body, and that is related to this fastness and slowness. And for this, as what we compared in the in our red fiber, that we have soleus muscle in the back of the leg, we have similar kind of muscle associated with tibia, that is again the front bone in the leg, the lower leg, tibia. So, the muscle is called tibialis. So, tibialis muscle is one very good example of this fast fiber, because lot of activities, very fast contraction and all is required in this part. So, tibialis, particularly anterior tibialis muscle, is related to this fast fiber. So, in general right now we have clear cut idea that we have two distinct type of fibers available in this skeletal muscle group, and this skeletal muscle is differentiated based on the sarcoplasmic content and the myoglobin concentration as well as mitochondrial concentration, and accordingly we can just differentiate these two fibers in the skeletal muscle. So, this is all about the skeleton muscle. Now, since we have gone through this skeleton muscle, we will try to see in our next slide regarding smooth muscle. And in smooth muscle, we will try to understand that what are the content, why these smooth muscle are different than what we have learned right now in skeletal muscle. So, just try to recall back that we have differentiated this muscle mass of the body into three parts. One is a skeleton muscle, the second is visceral, and the third is cardiac. And in general anatomical feature, we defined that we have striations and without striations. So, striation is a very important phenomena. So, let us see and try to understand why there is a difference in this muscle type. And so, let us go and see the slide one more time, that we are having this smooth muscle. So, now these are some of the very hallmark feature of this smooth muscle. So, we will go one by one. So, try to understand here that smooth muscles are located in hollow organs, they are non-striated, they are having single nucleus, they are regulated by autonomic nervous system, and they do not have any phenomena called fatigue. So, we will see one by one. Now, we will discuss smooth muscle, and the first point what we discuss is they are located in the hollow organ of the body. So, if we see what are the hollow organs in the body, the first thing comes in our mind is starting from our gut itself. So, we have our whole digestive system that starts from esophagus. So, we have esophagus, stomach, large intestine, small intestine, large intestine, these are all hollow organs. So, our whole gut, whole viscera. So, we have we can just call gut, which is our digestive system. We have the tube like appearance in many other organ. One such very specialized, of course, we will discuss it later on, but one such is our excretory system. We can simply call it urinary bladder, where we have the sac that can store urine. So, these fibers are basically very flexible, and this flexibility is coming because of this smooth muscle or smooth cell, which is a very hallmark characteristic feature of these different kind of fibers. So, so we will not go in detail about the other aspect, because we have to cover individual excretory system and other systems separately in the chapters. So, we will just try to focus here that it is located in the hollow organs, wherever the hollow organs it's there. Second very important thing, this is not in our control. Not in our control means these are not voluntary, these are all involuntary muscle. So, that we discussed earlier also. So, this is not under our control. So, if we go back to the slide, the fourth point here is these are regulated by autonomic nervous system. Autonomic stands for autos, autonomous, right? This is automatic. So, these are not in our control. So, these are autonomously controlled, means these are all regulated internally by body homeostatic mechanism. These cells, if we start looking into this cell, how these cells are look in outside. So, these cells are like tapered. So, these cells are roughly tapered in nature. They do not have striations. So, striations are absent here, and because of this region they are not giving this banding pattern what we discussed in the skeleton muscle. So, there is no banding pattern. Of course, there is an actin and myosin filament. So, we have this actin and myosin filament here also, but there is no as such striations in this fiber. So, that is why they are called smooth. We have a single nucleus in the center. So, these are not multinucleated, that means there is no synthesia, these are all single nucleated cell. Now, the second thing what we discussed in the earlier lectures, that our skeleton muscle is having a very unique property, that now what is happening, that we are doing a lot of contraction, and we discussed earlier also that this contraction is leading to depletion of energy from the body, and because of this depletion of energy there is a limited capacity that we can do this contraction activity, and there is certain point, because these are all our voluntary. So, I am voluntary doing contraction, and at a certain point we are getting a phenomena called fatigue, and this fatigue, if we see this fatigue, what is fatigue? This fatigue phenomena is coming or is happening because of the accumulation of lactic acid. So, lactic acid is getting accumulated in the muscle fiber or the muscle, and because of this lactic acid the contraction is getting hampered and there is no contraction, and the condition is called as fatigue. Whereas, in this case of a smooth muscle we do not have fatigue. Just imagine a situation when we are saying that we are not doing any kind of activity. So, our gut is not moving, we are unable to digest our food. That is what is fatigue. So, if our digestive system start producing fatigue kind of phenomena, we are unable to digest anything. Now, since this is the beauty about our human physiology, that each and everything is so synchronized that we are maintaining our homeostasis nicely. So, our all internal organs are whichsoever is not controlled by our will are all involuntary, and because of this involuntary nature, they do not have any fatigue kind of phenomena. So, we are continuously pumping blood from the heart. We are continuously doing a phenomena called peristalsis. So, this is peristalsis. Now, peristalsis is another phenomena in gut. So, if we see this, suppose this is a gut, this is a gut. Now, if the food is coming from this direction, there is a pulsation, and this pulsation is passing from this direction to this direction. So, because of this region, the food is passing from one direction to other direction. That means, from mouth to esophagus, esophagus to stomach, stomach to small intestine and large intestine. So, this process is kind of pulsation, and this pulsation is kind of moving the whole thing. So, these all muscle are basically smooth muscle. So, peristalsis in the gut region is governed by this smooth muscle fiber. Now, similar kind of peristalsis kind of phenomena can be seen in case of earthworm. If you can see and visualize, the earthworms are very cylindrical in nature. If you start looking their motion, what is happening, their body is kind of pulsating with the direction when you have the body cavity is kind of pulsating. So, the body mass is moving from one direction. Is a similar kind of peristaltic movement, but that is not for digestion, that is for movement, locomotion. So, they are moving from one point to other point because of this pulsatory kind of motion in earthworm. So, these are all a very similar kind of phenomena which we are seeing with smooth muscle. Now, what we said here, that they have single nucleus, they are regulated by autonomous nervous system, they do not have fatigue, they are non-striated, so there is no striation, they are single, but they have actin and myosin filament. Then how they are contracting? Now, if we see, these are some of the locus. So, suppose there are this kind of locus, and then this actin and myosin filaments are kind of distributed like this. So, this is kind of a network of this filament in this smooth muscle fiber. At the time of contraction, what is happening? This whole muscle is getting contracted. So, the actin and myosin filament is basically getting contraction by those impulses which are generated by the nervous system. So, because of this kind of impulse contraction, what we are getting at the end is kind of this mass, where these points, these 1 and 2, 3 points are basically kind of contracted in such a way to squeeze the whole thing. So, this is kind of a contraction they are getting. So, these are not similar to the striated muscle what we discussed in the skeletal muscle, but definitely there is a contraction phenomena going on here. Now, since these are nicely associated with another fiber also, so we have another fiber associated here, so like that. So, we have a complete sheet of cells in there. So, there should be a pass on information of impulse from one cell to other cell, and that is done by gap junction. We are not going to detail about this whole phenomena, but the junction in between these two cells are called gap junctions. And gap junction is the actual area where the impulse are getting transmitted from one cell to other cell. So, these these are some of the smooth muscle features which we need to understand before going in detail about the other aspect of this skeleton system. So, in nutshell, we have completed the complete mechanism which we have gone through the last 2 lectures actually. So, we covered how this skeleton muscle and this smooth muscle are getting differentiated. Of course, these are not much of the concern in terms of understanding the striation and all. So, those striations, the Z band and the H band and the I band and other M band and all, these are important. So, here those complexities are not there. So, these are very simple smooth muscle located in the gut area. Now, so we finish this. Let us move on to some new topic. Being understanding this whole phenomena of muscle contraction, there are deviations. So, that is what we have to understand in all physiological aspect, that our body is not behaving regularly to these conditions. So, we are always having some deviations, some abnormalities, some kind of unique features which are related to the muscle system we need to understand. Since we have understood the whole phenomena, let us try to see a very specific terminology related to this muscle contraction and mechanism. So, if you see in the next slide, we have a phenomena called rigor mortis. Now, rigor mortis, if you look into the slide, muscles contract and become rigid after death because of the loss of adenosine triphosphate. Now, this adenosine triphosphate is an energy currency in the cell. So, if you do not have an ATP, the muscle is not going to contract. So, muscle will remain as such, and this is what we call rigor mortis. Let's see rigor mortis. So, rigor mortis is a phenomena that is happening after death. After death, the cells are dying, all cells are dead. Now, because of this deadness, there is no as such physiological activity going on. So, there is no ATP in the body. So, because of the no ATP available, so there is a death, and because of death, we do not have ATP, and since there is no ATP, we do not have any contraction in the muscle. So, the muscle mass is not at all contracting. Now, because of no contraction, the whole body is getting stiff, and this stiffness is coming because of no ATP. Now, if you go beyond 15 to 24 hours, and it depends upon the temperature outside. So, we are saying that if the environment temperature is very high, the body is getting kind of giving a foul smell and other kind of activities coming from the body if the temperature is high. But if temperature is a little low, then this phenomena can last for a little longer. Now, we have to understand this one in a different prospects also, because this is the normal physiological process. Once the body is getting contracted after certain period of time, after 15 to 25 hours based on the temperature, the autolytic activity, we can call it autolysis. Autolysis means, auto means self, lysis means destruction, own destruction, because the body mechanism, everything is gone. So, the body is not behaving properly. So, the body muscle is undergoing lysis, disruption, and because of this disruption, the whole body has become flexible. So, it started with a stiffness, and later on it getting into a picture where the whole body become liquefying because of this autolysis phenomena coming from the lysosome and other kind of organelle which are getting ruptured and causing all those hydrolytic enzyme to come out in the body system. So, because of this reason, the cells are getting dying, getting liquefaction, and because of this reason, the whole body is getting flexible, right. So, this is called rigor mortis. There is a very similar kind of terminology which is very much applicable immediately after death, and that is called algor mortis. Algor mortis. This is not to be confused with this rigor mortis. This is simply cooling of the body immediately after death. So, the body temperature is suddenly coming down, and this coming down of the body temperature is because of the physiological condition, subsiding of the physiological condition, complete stoppage of the physiological condition. The whole body temperature is coming down. This downward temperature immediately after death is called rigor mortis. So, these are two very specific terminology. Of course, this is not related to muscle fiber, but the nomenclature is same. So, I thought I will just explain this terminology here also. So, here it is rigor mortis. The next in the slide is called heat rigor. Heat rigor, if you look into the slide, the definition wise it is saying that muscle shortening in exposure to high heat condition approximately about 50 degrees centigrade. Heat rigor. This heat rigor is nothing but the kind of shortening of the muscle fiber in high heat condition. Now, this is happening because of coagulation of the proteins which are there in the muscle, like actin and myosin. So, these are the proteins which are there in the muscle fiber, and because of this heat these are getting coagulated. Now, coagulation is a term coming from the blood. So, try to recall back, we are calling clotting of the blood. So, what is happening? The liquid form of the blood is converted into a clot which is solid form. So, liquid form is converted into solid form by a process called coagulation. So, coagulation is some process that is causing the change in the state of a molecule or of a biological substance. Here also happening the same thing. We are not going to dig in the detail of the molecular aspect of this heat rigor, but what is happening because of the higher temperature, the protein is getting disrupted, and because of this disruption we are getting a shortening of this muscle filament, and this is called heat rigor. All right. So, we are trying to understand the terminology related to the muscle contraction. The next is very important in the slide, and the disease is called, and this is a disease actually. The disease is called myasthenia gravis, and this is an autoimmune disease, and this is very much characterized by a hallmark feature where there is inability to transmit signal through motor end plate. So, now having said that motor end plate, we have gone through this motor end plate and all, we will try to discuss what is happening here. So, this is the disease condition myasthenia gravis, and in myasthenia gravis we are having, so this is autoimmune disease. Now, we have to understand what is autoimmune. Autoimmune. Auto means self, immune means immunity, the defense. In our body system we have immunity, something called immune system, which is against the pathogen, and pathogens are either virus or bacteria which are coming from outside environment. So, those bacteria and viruses which are coming from outside environment is creating some kind of nuisance in our body, and our body is producing an immune response to get those things out, to get rid of those disease condition. Now, just consider a situation where we do not have any virus and bacteria, but our immune response is getting activated. Now, there is no as such entity, there is no as such outsider entered inside the body, but our body is behaving differently. Now, our body is producing immune response. What will happen to that immune response? Since there is no one where that immune response can go and target, body is creating their own cell as a target. So, the body immune response is destroying its own cell, and those all disease condition which are coming because of our own auto means own immunity, immune system. So, those are all called as autoimmune diseases. So, this is one such disease which is autoimmune in nature. Now, what is happening here we need to understand once we will draw a picture of motor end plate. So, let us see. So, we have this axons and these axons are carrying impulse. So, these are all motor axons, and these are all carrying the information from the central nervous system, and then we have this muscle here, and this area is called synaptic cleft, as we discussed in the last class, synaptic cleft. So, what is happening here, that you have some chemicals coming into this area, and those chemicals are what we discussed in the last class is called neurotransmitter, and one common neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. We simply write it ACH, acetylcholine, and this acetylcholine is binding to the area which is postsynaptic. Here it is postsynaptic, this is presynaptic, which we discussed. This is presynaptic and this is postsynaptic. So, this is what is happening in this whole area, and this is called motor and plate. So, this whole area is what is responsible for this disease condition, myasthenia gravis. So, let us see one more time what is that in the slide, myasthenia gravis. So, this is an autoimmune disease, and what is happening? Inability to transmit signals through motor end plate. Now, here it is. So, we draw on the figure here. Now, there are 3-4 possibilities here, but we will describe the most plausible theory, most applicable one. There is a possibility that this signal, now this signal is all chemical, and these chemicals are coming and binding to this receptor. So, these receptors are here. Receptors are nothing but the catching area. So, suppose if you have this chalk coming in your hand, so this is a receptor. So, you can catch by your hand. So, basically these are hand-like region in the muscle. So, something, so chalk like structure, these are chemicals. So, these are coming and you need to catch this one. Now, what if I pull my hand like this? If I pull my hand like this chalk will drop down, right? So, we are unable to catch this one. Similarly, what is happening here, the receptor is kind of not available. If receptor is not available, these chemicals will just float like this here, and because of this floating, there is no impulse transmitted into this one. So, my body is not knowing that whether the chalk is here or not. So, because of this region, there is no transmission of impulse, and because of no transmission of impulse, there is no contraction. So, this is one region. Second, there are chances that this whole folded area become flat. So, you have this whole area become flat. Now, the possibility is this synaptic cleft which was there earlier is now like a flat area. Now, the whole distance which was earlier like this is very small, now become very large, and if it is very large, the impulse may not transmit properly. So, if it is not transmitting properly, there is no contraction. So, this is another reason for this kind of phenomena, which we are discussing, myasthenia gravis. So, of course, there are many others, but these are some of the very effective way to understand disease condition. Now, having said that, these all processes are happening and there is no contraction. Now, what will you visualize if you see the patient suffering from disease? So, what will happen if you see the patient suffering from myasthenia gravis? They are unable to stand. Their muscles are not contracting properly. So, their whole body is flaccid. They will just sit down. They will just collapse. The whole body is collapsed. So, these are very common in kids where we are showing this kind of where they are unable to sustain the weight, the proper weight and all, because the contraction is not happening. So, they are unable to contract the body, and they because of this physiology which is very much associated with motor end plate. So, we need to understand that there is a problem here in neuronal transmission of the muscle area. All right. So, we have understood myasthenia gravis, which is a disease condition related to the skeletal muscle abnormality, which is an autoimmune disease. The body immune response is producing something which is creating this nuisance in the body. Next in the slide is a very important disease condition. Again, it's a genetic disorder called muscular dystrophy. This muscular dystrophy is progressive weakness and loss of muscle mass, and this is happening because of the interference in the production of a protein which is basically required to produce a healthy muscle, right. So, this is called this is a disease condition which is genetically controlled. So, these are genetic disease condition. So, genetic means there is some problem coming from the gene side. So, gene we know these are inside we have a chromosome, and then chromosome we have gene, and in this gene each and every, so we have chromosome. So, suppose we have chromosomes, and in chromosome we have gene, and in this gene we have, this gene is basically made up of DNA, and this gene is going to form a protein. So, this is what is protein, and this protein is actually giving functionality to an individual. So, we can't do any phenomena or any kind of activity without the production of protein. So, each and every gene in the body is most of them actually are related in production of some protein, which is very important to maintain the human physiology in a proper shape. Now, this protein which is leading to this condition muscular dystrophy is called dystrophin. Dystrophin. So, dystrophin is a protein, and because of this problem in the gene level, that is why we are calling it a genetic disorder. So, there is a problem in the gene level, and because of this gene problem there is a mutation. Mutation is any abnormality in the gene, and because of this abnormality there is abrupt or no production of protein, and because of no or abrupt production or insufficient or different form of production of protein, anything can happen, right. So, if you mutate a gene, there are chances that the protein will not produce, there are chances that protein will form in a different style, or there are chances that the protein will form in less concentration or less amount. Anything can happen. Anything which leads to this problem in the protein can lead to a problem in this protein which is going to form in the body, dystrophin. Now, why this dystrophin is important? This dystrophin is very important because this dystrophin is attaching or activating or kind of giving an attachment or interacting with our protein, which we have discussed a lot, and that is actin. So, this actin and dystrophin are having a very close relationship. So, if dystrophin is abrupt, the actin will also behave abruptly, and because of this abrupt behavior one is suffering from a disease condition which we call muscular dystrophy. So, muscular dystrophy is a genetic disorder, problem in a gene called dystrophin, which is associated with actin, and because of this reason the body is unable to produce a proper muscle mass. So, the body is very different. So, the proper architect of the muscle is not good. So, the body the person who is suffering from this condition is unable to do any kind of normal routine activity because of the muscle weakness. This is very common in kids, male kids, particularly in the childhood it is very prominent, but it can show its activity in any duration of or any time in the life. So, this is very important genetic disorder in human body. So, we are almost getting into the final part, and the last one in the slide is tetany. So, tetany is another condition where we have the involvement of muscular mass, and in tetany this is a disorder of increased neuronal excitability. Now, what is happening? The whole neuron is getting excited. So, more of the excitation is coming, and because of this more excitation there is involuntary. So, there is no control in the contraction of muscle, and this is partly or mostly happening because of the less calcium ion. So, you have less calcium ion, and because of this less calcium ion the whole contraction is not under your control, and this involuntary contraction, the wild contraction we call it, very wild contraction, leads to a condition called tetany, and tetany is also a very important condition happening because of the increased neuronal excitability. That is all I guess for covering this whole topic related to mechanism of muscle contraction. Of course, we have covered it in a very elaborative fashion, and one has to understand this all phenomena like rigor mortis, myasthenia gravis, muscular dystrophy, tetany, and other kind of activities related to the muscle movement, and these are all related to the muscle contraction one way or other way. Either these are controlled by our autonomic nervous system, or because of some problem in the protein production. So, in the next class we will discuss about the whole skeleton system, how these bones are arranged, how this bony structure are associated, because we have gone through the muscle mass which is outside this bone. Now, what is causing this muscle to make this shape? So, we need some background, we need a framework, and that frame is coming from skeleton bone and all. So, we will see the skeleton system in our next class.